question that I have two issues. One, we don't have last year's pay policy statement side by side, so we can't really compare any changes, and it would have been really useful to know what the changes were. And I can ask the question in public, but I probably want an answer in non-public, which is, does this draft pay policy statement contain the changes that will be necessary to implement some of the recent decisions of the Senior Remuneration Subcommittee?
That's in confidential.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Look, I think that we will come back to this paper maybe. Should we take it in confidential? I think. David.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick question on London waiting. I did go through the papers, and if I've missed it, I apologise. But how is that determined? London waiting, is there guidelines to that, or is it just something that we decide?
Chris, I think you can answer.
And I also wondered whether how London waiting is attributed to those that are working remotely.
So London waiting is negotiated locally as part of our annual process. So it's a kind of output of that, and it is applied based on people's normal working place. So people that are in the office for a certain percentage of the time will receive it based on their working location. So we currently have an inner London waiting and an outside inner London waiting, but people who work remotely continuously wouldn't be on the inner London waiting.
Chair, could I just come back on that?
Yes.
Sorry, I still don't quite understand how the amount is determined. I mean, you said it was determined internally.
It's kind of effectively an output of many years of negotiation. So the values are set and they are negotiated each year as part of the cost of living pay award. So they raise or don't raise as part of that annual negotiation process.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I'm just to come back to my point. I suppose this is historical and you might not know the answer to it, but then you're saying that these are local government posts, but the managing director of City Bridge Foundation would have nothing to do with local government, but they're there. We could argue one way or the other about the principal of the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. So it does seem that there's a bit of illogicality, which might be how it's grown over the years, but maybe we do it, maybe not this point, but at some point we need just to sort of try to work out our rationality as why we've included these and not others.
I think that this is actually a good time. I think there's no time like the present. So if there's anything that we want to do, we should clean it up now. City Solicitor, do you have any thoughts on that? Because it is under, the Localism Act does guide us, but we've decided to do things slightly differently. Any thoughts from your side? Whom we include in or out of our pay policy statement?
Sorry. I should have said my hearing. I really must get my hearing seen to. I do apologise, Chairman. So I'm trying to remember how what was. I mean, I can see why the schools are out with, because A, they are clearly not local government, and B, they are not employed on local authority terms and conditions and are not in the local government pension. But if you'd have asked me prior to this, I wouldn't have known as to whether they were in or out. So I think they're probably an outlier. Everybody else, I recall, Mr. Lord may be able to help me here. I think everybody else, a policy view was taken that we would include everybody else. So City Bridge Foundation, yes, not doing local authority functions, absolutely, but employed on local government terms and conditions in the LGPS. There is another question around the 100,000, which of course is a lot less money now than it was in 2012, and certainly there has been some talk over the years about whether people who are in split posts, whether you split out the local government bit from the non-local government bit to change your reporting obligations. There will be views around the table as to that, but technically speaking, section 43 of the Localism Act specifically states that the requirement only applies to us in our capacity as a local authority, which effectively gives you discretion for non-local authority and hybrid posts.
Thank you. So, Steve, does that answer your question? Ed, does that answer your question?
Provides a very good rationale. Chair, but it does mean that there is some decisions out with what we have to put in about whether we put it in or not, and maybe at some point in the future we should review that. So there's no actual reason why we couldn't put in the heads of the independent schools. That there's nothing that prevents us doing that. Yeah, Michael nodding his head. So maybe at some point in the future, not this time, we should make a decision whether we want to do that or not.
Okay, so I've got Ed and then Sandra.
Well, I think if it was up to me, I probably would include the heads of the independent schools, but with a statement that their salaries are set in a separate way and they are not part of the local government pension scheme. Because we do treat other functions that are non-local authority as if they were. The recorder's an interesting one because he's on judicial pay scales, but actually, but we do pay his salary, so that's not a bad thought. And actually, we pay the common sergeant's salary as well. The other interesting one is the Commissioner of Police, who is on police terms and conditions and paid in accordance with police pay scales, but he is a high officer of the corporation elected by the Court of Common Council. And on that basis, again, I would probably err on the side of inclusion, but with a statement saying that the police commissioner terms and conditions are set nationally. But I think we should still indicate it. And actually, that's given current issues around the future of the City of London police force. It's probably not a bad thing to remind people that we employ a police commissioner, and with all the sort of bells and whistles that go with it.
Sandra.
I'd just like to support my two colleagues. I think that I think we ought to. The bias should be in favour of them if their employees being included with the necessary caveats, and I can't think offhand of a single reason why any of those should be excluded, but they could be when the detailed work is done, a reason why somebody shouldn't be included. But I think the bias should be in favour of inclusion.
Thank you. So if it's now we know that the pay policy, sorry, Sir Michael.
Sorry, Chair, it just seems to me that it is fairly clear cut. If we cut the payroll check, then it goes in. And if we don't cut the payroll check, it doesn't.
So we know that the pay policy statement is coming back very soon because of Ambition 25 once consultation has ended. So maybe we take an action that once consultation has ended, we come back with an updated pay policy statement to include those changes as well as those that have been suggested here by the committee. I think that would be fair. Okay, thank you. Town Clerk.
Thank you. But is that agreeing it as it is now? It needs agreeing by March.
So we're going to come back to it in confidential because there's a few items.
Fine. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That moves us on to item number 5, departmental budget estimates 2026 to 27. We have Mark Jarvis. Declan Greaves in attendance. Sorry to introduce the item and respond to any question.
That's great, thank you. So yeah, in front of you today, we've got the budget estimates for next year. As you can see, we've got a comparison for this year's original budget compared to next year's. Just the main changes to run through really. Essentially, we've got a £2.1 million uplift compared to this year against next year's estimates. This is largely to do with the 1.8 million uplift in temporary support for the Chief People Officer, a 345k inflationary uplift, as well as a budget transfer to deputy town clerks. So those are the major details. As I say, I'm happy to take any further questions on the budgets that members may have, of course.
Sandra.
Thank you. I have 2 points to raise. There's a proposal to increase the HR budget by 2 million. And the only justification that I can see is temporary support to aid the delivery of key organisational outcomes and member ambitions. I really don't think that's a good enough justification for us to approve a £2 million increase. I think we need more. There may well be a very good reason, but I think we need to know what it is. Yeah, the second point is about the staffing numbers of the HR department. It's going up by just under 17 roles. It's a 20% increase, and that would take the ratio of 1 to 43 HR staff to the rest of the staff, which is an extremely rich proportion, and I think it needs more justification.
So just coming back on that, I did ask for a little bit more detail during call over to be shared on the roles, that the temporary roles in HR. So is that available?
So, Chair, I'm happy to take this question. So, yes, we've got the teams available, and I can give you the FTs as well. So I'd rather not go into the detail because obviously it's confidential. So just in relation to, obviously, HR is going through a transformational journey, and in relation to the £1.8 million, this was approved by this committee in November 24. And it was supported in order to ensure that actually the HRA can go through their transformational journey to get themselves back to a position where they are able to provide the services that they're actually here to do. This funding was agreed on a 3-year basis, which was supported by Finance Committee and also supported by Court of Common Council. So these roles include specialist services, which is part of the transformational journey. There's 7 FTEs within that. There's a chief of staff, which is 1 FTE. The development and design team, which is also 7 FTEs, and the employee services is also 1 FTE.
Okay, Sandra, come back to you, and then Philip Woodhouse, and then Stephen. Yeah.
I think 2 things about it previously being agreed in November 24. 3 things actually. One is that there's people here that weren't here in November 24, so it'd be good to hear the argumentation anyway. Secondly, that's quite a long time ago, and things have happened quite significantly to our budget since then. And thirdly, I mean, I just think that a paper should, because we're being asked to approve this, we ought to be told quite categorically what this money's for.
Philip Woodhouse.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just quite surprised that this paper, I get the point, Sonia, thank you, about the fact that it's been to court and it's been through finance, but this is a new paper with a new increase, and it's only coming here. It's not, doesn't appear to be going to finance. And again, it's yet more expenditure, and we keep being told that we're losing value as an organisation by the Finance Committee. And I just worry yet again, it's only being looked at by us, and it probably hasn't been looked at by finance as it sits. And I agree with Sandra's comments.
Okay, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I think my comments are on similar lines, which is I was just going to ask if there's been any adjustment here post the local government finance settlement on the 17th of December, which I know very recent and very fast moving. Thank you.
I'll hand that back to the team to answer.
Okay, in relation to providing the information on that 1.8 million, because it is transformational funding over a 3-year period, which is why it's been separated out. So it's been very transparent about this is transformational funding, and it has been agreed by court, and it's also included in the MTFP. So it's not new money. We've already found the money. This was back in 2024, which was also added in there. And it was funded through savings, which was found through an increase in rental income. So it's not an additional pressure, which I would like to confirm. In relation to what the money is for, we can obviously, we're happy to provide the information, the details behind that. I would have to dig out the details, but happy to share that with members and confidential, or circulate this after the meeting. And there was no adjustment post the local government.
Going back to Sandra, then I think Deputy Chair will come in, then I'll come in.
Just to mention, Chair, that I've had an offline exchange with Henry Colthurst, who couldn't make it today, and he was he too was not wholly happy with this justification of these numbers, and suggested that the views are tabled at the RESC meeting next week, where all the budgets are being looked at.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, 2 points. I agree on the point around the finance. I think we need to have clarity in terms of that point. And I'm surprised it isn't going back to finance. But I think in terms of point 9 on page 32, we talk about to support the temporary roles, and we may want to take this in confidential, but I think, you know, we've been really clear as a committee about wanted to support the Chief People Officer in backfilling a number of vacancies that were strategically fundamentally important to the service that the HR team provide. But I think we need to get a view now in terms of what's the projected timeline on running some of these down, because I thought we'd made a commitment as a committee that we were going to look to absolutely reduce these temporary appointments. So I think we need much more clarity, and I'd like to see a provisional timeline that we can see that number is being run down, because that's 1.8 million that we're spending.
Indeed. So Greg Lawrence, I'll come in just before Greg. So I think from my perspective, I think what would have been good for members to see would be a ramp up and a ramp down plan. And this is, you know, we keep asking for these things. It just helps us to make decisions a lot easier. So we wouldn't be asking all of this if we had that information, and you know, and it would have shown how, you know, how much, you know, how we're ramping down people through the program. Also understanding that we're bringing in SAP. We know that I've looked at the benefits case. We know there's some financial benefits. So how many roles are they taking out? You see, all of this we need to look at holistically. And that's the reason why there's so many questions. So, and it's simply because the information is not being made available. I think that's all it is. So I'm going to hand over the town clerk. Then I think, who else wants to come in? Greg Lawrence, the town clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. I think all the comments are well made, but let's remember the starting point and the fact that we've gone through churn and Cliff's come in, picking up the mantle from a very difficult position and trying to get his head around what the baseline position should be. We're all sat here looking at figures and making an assumption that the original budget is right. Now, I'm not convinced that's the case, actually, and given the work that we're doing in transformation and how the workforce has grown around Ambition 25 and the other projects you allude to, ERP, another one, we need to establish what's right for this organisation at this time, and then present members with, because you're absolutely right, there was an agreement in November 24 to come back with a flight path downwards, but that has to happen with intelligence behind it, with a plan behind it, and I think that Cliff and the team need a bit of time to work that through, Chairman, would be my advice.
Okay, Greg.
Thanks, Chairman. I think what we're talking about here needs to be talked in the non-public session, because we're skirting around everything here and we're not coming to the crux of it. I think most of this, what we've been talking about, needs to be spoken in the non-public.
Okay, and Chief People Officer want to come in?
Yeah, so I was going to, echo Greg's comment there as well, because obviously there's people on the back end of this, so I think it's really important to take it into non-public or confidential. I think just kind of picking up Sandra's point around ratios as well, because I think that's really important to look at going forward about the makeup of the team and the shape. So, for example, we have an in-sourced occupational health team, which will be normally outsourced as part of those numbers as well. So that's kind of a cost that you wouldn't normally see. I've normally had outsourced occupational health teams. It's in-sourced here, so they're increased numbers against the ratio. So I think it's kind of a broader conversation around the design going forward. I believe the funding was for 3 years, and I've always been committed to kind of looking at the shape. But we've got to, as the town clerk says, we've got to get it stable. We've got to get it working, and I think that's been the journey so far. But we still, before we start thinking about what do we need to go forwards with, but I'm absolutely committed to come back with that.
Okay, thank you. Let's address some of these in non-public, if that's okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us on to item number 6, the annual terms of reference review. It's a report for information on pages 37 to 42 of your pack. And we have...
Well, my obvious question is, why is the report for information? At the away day, we did a review of the terms of reference with the intention that it would come to this meeting for a decision. to recommend a policy for any changes to our terms of reference. So surely this should not be a report for information.
I think, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chris, but I think the point was you have both here and March before it's then submitted onto policy and resources. So the January one was, look, here's what we think you've highlighted. We'll go away, we'll circulate by email any, the opportunity for members to feed in, and we'll do the updated version that's produced, which then means that back in March, you'll get that updated version in full, which allows you to sort of input it multiple times over email up until sign it off in March, then it goes to P&R in March, then it goes to Common Council in April. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct. I think following the strategy day, having reflected further, there'll be so that you can set the terms of reference, but there are policies in place that would still escalate items to Corporate Services Committee. So it's about considering the terms of reference alongside that, the policies that sit beneath it that are sending items up to Corporate Services Committee, doing it in the round and giving ourselves time to do that and bring it back in March, which is then in time for it to go to P&R in March also would be the hope, and it meeting the timeline to go to Court of Common Council in line with the white paper. That's the plan.
So we've got Steve Goodman and then Sandra Jenner.
You want to save the best till last, I know, Jeff. I've always been self-deprecating, Ian, you know that. Yeah, my point, I think, which again I made at the away day, is that one committee's terms of reference influences the other. So what I was hoping that Greg and his colleagues might do is look at the sorts of things we were saying at the away day and how they might impact on other terms of reference, and then come back with some understanding about what was our responsibility and what might be the service committee's responsibility, and perhaps our responsibility is to scrutinise some of the things that the service committee does, like I think finance committee might scrutinise others.
And that's exactly, I think, the point you're just trying to make about some of these things in policies or in other delegations or in other areas, and you need to sort of take a bit of a read across. At the risk of spoiling a delightful surprise, you will get a report, I think, from Polly in February, I think probably at P&R in the first instance, around governance generally, and talking about that cohesive look at terms of reference and their interactions. So,
Sandra.
Thank you. I think there was just a couple of things that I thought we mentioned at the away day that aren't specifically mentioned in here. One is our oversight stroke scrutiny role. I think that needs to be sort of explicit. And the other thing, which is actually mentioned later in the pack, which is risk management, I think that ought to be explicitly in our terms of reference as well. And I also, in terms of producing a draft, I wondered whether it would be useful to set up a task and finish group, a subgroup of members working with officers, to maybe come up with some ideas, present them. It would give us more chance to work them through, and maybe we'd get a good outcome if we were to do it that way.
Okay, and the only observation from my side is that I think the view from members was we wanted our terms of reference to be more strategic. Still reads very much as the way that it was before. So just something to think about, maybe taking Sandra's suggestion there about a task and finish group. Maybe we can all just work on getting this over the line. So that's back over to officers.
would it be helpful in sort of taking forward that specific recommendation? I mean, obviously, as we update something and circulate it, I don't want to necessarily exclude anyone who wants to participate. If I sort of just invite anyone who'd be happy to and offer a few dates, then we can sort of do it as collaboratively as we can.
Adam.
So just one thing I want could I add is the terms of reference we were presented at the away day were different from the terms of reference I'd managed to get off the website, and we really didn't have time to study them. And I think it's very important why we should get the opportunity with something like a task and finish group to actually look at those, because clearly some things are missing and some things may be duplicated.
But I'm in the committee's hands. If you would rather select a I won't use the word subgroup, but a number of your representatives you want to designate as the people to sort of take the lead at this point, I'm very happy to include whoever, but I'm in your hands really is how you prefer to do it.
I think I like your idea. If you can just send out an email to the members of this committee, those who have the time and are able to contribute towards it, they will come back to you, and then we go from there. I think that's a good way to do it. Town Clerk.
Thank you. That moves us on to item number 7, which is the People and HR Risk Management Update. Chief People Officer to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. So this room-patient paper, largely a reset around how we're managing risk within HR and a change to one of the corporate risks we were looking at. So historically, the risks haven't been looked at as regularly as I would like, and I think there's some of them are fairly historic. One of the examples within that is a risk around recruitment and retention. So I think the attrition rate at the point in time was 18%. That's now running at 11%. My view on this is actually it varies wildly across the organisation, and it's much more effective to manage it locally with each of the individual departments through their business partners. However, in the context of a rollout of a new HR and finance system, Ambition 25, and likely changes to the organisation going forward, I think there is a risk which we need on the corporate register around change management within the organisation and change readiness. And I'll look to Dion just in case there's anything to add to that. But that's the for information paper.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It was just adding to call out a point that was raised at the Corporate Services Away Day, and that is the point about people risks in their entirety not being under the purview of this committee when it should be. And this paper is to reset that. Going forward, as I said at the committee, at the Away Day, but I'll reinforce it here for the notes, that this committee obviously wears 2 hats. One is the Grand Committee, the other is a Service Committee. In terms of the Grand Committee, the responsibilities would be on people issues across the piece that would be escalated, that sit above other service committees or departmental boards. The other is the Service Committee, as you had your presentations at your Away Day, that you will see those risks coming through in a number of different ways, including, as a minimum, quarterly updates through your business planning process. The relationship between this committee and audit and risk management, which I know some members sit on, is that is your point of escalation. Outside of this meeting and based on any questions, comments, observations from today and previously, there is the Chief Officer Risk Management Group, which I chair as the SRO for corporate risk on the officer side. That is also a point of escalation. So in terms of this committee and its responsibilities, you will either get an escalation form from your service committee chief officers, from any risks coming down from Audit and Risk Management Committee or from the Chief Officer Risk Management Group. But I just wanted to emphasise this paper is the start of that because it hasn't been coming to this committee previously. Thank you.
Sandra.
I just had one question, and I agree with all of this, is when are we going to start and when will we have our first report?
So the reason this is for information is because of the articulation of what is the corporate risk, what is the thing that should be keeping us awake at night. As I said, Chief Officer Risk Management Group is tomorrow. I would expect by your next committee you should have a paper for decision here. I'm looking at Cliff as he's either going to shout or smile. But given the fact that there has been a huge amount of work behind the scenes, recognising that we've been carrying a gap for a while, so I would expect at your next committee to have a paper for decision. And then, as I said, quarterly, you will have, as a minimum, updates on the various different red departmental risks and any corporate risks related to people.
Ed Lord.
I'm entirely supportive of this. It's a related matter and it falls from something Dion said. And this is a plea, I think, to the Deputy Town Clerk, which is, could he please provide guidance to senior officers and indeed members on terminology, because Dion referred to grand committees and service committees. In truth, actually, all committees that report to the Court of Common Council are grand committees. That is what the term historically here meant. I think we probably ought to get rid of the words grand committee and come up with an alternative phrasing which actually makes clear what the roles and types of committees are. But certainly I don't want to hear very senior officers using terminology which actually is just fundamentally wrong. And it's not her fault, it's probably the fact that Dion's never been told.
Okay. Deputy Chair.
It's a pedantic point, but I'm really pleased that we're going to do this on a quarterly basis. I think that's really important. I think that should be one of the key things as a committee that we are very aware of. But it's just to say, you know, from memory, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, we have kind of a schedule of things that come to this committee, just to make sure that that is absolutely added into that regular schedule so it doesn't get missed if we're looking at kind of the terms and reference, etc., etc.
Yes, Cliff.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I was going to say I completely agree. I think March is timely. I think following the corporate services offsite a couple of weeks ago, when we talked about kind of terms of reference resetting and what we're bringing to this committee, I think if we can start bringing dashboards, bring the risks on a quarterly basis, actually all it fits into a nice rhythm. And going to the Deputy Chair's point, 100% agree. I think having that kind of almost mapped out in the calendar as part of the terms of reference would be really helpful for everybody involved.
Thank you. Town Clerk.
Thank you. That brings us on to item number 8, questions on matters relating to the work of the committee. I'm aware of one question from Mr. Goodman relating to officer accommodation.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this actually is a question that was asked maybe a couple of years ago now, and will be on the action tracker if it's not answered today, I'm sure. But it was. Maybe it was even in the conversation about the pay policy some time ago, and that is how many of our officers have grace and favour houses, and can we have a list of those?
Can I just interrupt there, Chairman? This needs to go in the non-public.
The
Town Clerk advised me to ask it in public.
Because I think there is,
which is why I'm asking it.
Because I think there is a question. There is an answer because we have been working on this already. So Cliff, would you just like to answer?
Yeah, so absolutely, and thank you in advance for sending the question across. So at the moment there are 62 people across the organisation, plus 5 additional members at the senior management level. So the executive leadership group. If you would like me to read all 67 out now, I can do, but I'm happy to circulate that outside of committee, because that is getting into individual details, going to Greg's point. But that's the high level number. Excuse me, and a further report will be coming back around that whole area and benefit in kind.
So we are looking at it both at the as part of senior remuneration and also as part of CSC for others that's below that. So I think that answers the question.
Thank you. That moves us on to item number 9. Any other business that the chair considers urgent? No additional items or urgent items of business have been made aware to me in advance. Which brings us to seeing none in the room. That brings us on to item number 10, which is exclusion of the public. That is to agree. Thank you. I will ask my colleague to end the live stream, and I'll confirm once we're into non-public section. Give me one moment.